Okay, good evening. It's 6:01. Let's go ahead and get started. I'll call this meeting to order. This is a work session meeting of the Manatee Springs City Council for June 8th, 2021. Let's see if the city clerk could please call the roll.
Sure, Mayor. Council members Steve Brimner.
Here.
Julie Wolf. Here. Judith Chandler.
Here.
Natalie Johnson.
Here.
John Shada. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Nancy Fortune.
Present.
And Mayor John Graham.
Present, thank you. Okay, let's go ahead. We have 4 discussion items this evening. The first one has to do with minutes and it's a discussion on minutes and record keeping, and more specifically, this is minutes and record keeping for City Council. The city clerk was asked to look into this. I think probably the appropriate way to start off is to ask Judy to speak to this. Judy, would you like to go ahead and give us your overview?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Mayor, Council. So yes, I was asked to pull some information together and share with the council regarding minutes, different types of minutes, what type of minutes we use, why we do the minutes that we do. And then also, I think more specifically, the question sort of came around the capturing of the detail from the meetings, and if that's something we can do through the videos. So just to start, our minutes, there's 3 types. There's action, summary, and detail. Looking at anything you'd find online, Robert's Rules of Order, many others, the action minutes are really what they recommend for council. And the reason for that is really what you want to do is capture what action was taken, not necessarily what everybody said. What everyone says can be very, a lot of extra detail, a lot of extra time and resources that go into that. And the reality is it's the action that really matters. That is the history that you need to capture for that permanency of those minutes. So, like I said, what is done, not what is said. Everyone recommends action minutes. We actually do kind of a combination, which is pretty common, of action minutes with some summary. We do add a little bit of detail when it seems important to those minutes to capture those details. And the other part of that is sometimes we have council members that will say, if we can make this part of the record or for the record, can we include this information? That's also a cue for us, Amber, who does our minutes, to know that that's information that we want to include in there. There's a purpose for that. But that's also something that council as a whole should have a say-so in, rather than just one individual on council. There should be some sort of agreement, which doesn't have to be formal action, but it can be an agreement that, yes, that's information we'd like to capture for our minutes on this particular subject. So, quite often, what we try to do is rather than going into a lot of detail on the discussion, who said what about what, we will just put information in there that just says something like, there was discussion on these 5 topics, these 5 components. That that captures the need to understand that those things were discussed, that they were deliberated and are considered, without having to make them too intense, too drawn out. So yeah, going back as far as putting something on the record, it certainly can be done if somebody has a real need or desire identified to do that. This is, I think when you look at like a quasi-judicial type meeting, those are completely different. Those do capture a lot more detail because those are things that are very much about the subject matter that's being decided on. Whereas for council, typically you're hearing the arguments and then you're making an action, you're taking an action. So if one of the things to consider that I think is really important is when you go to make a motion, that's why it's really critical that you capture the detail that needs to be in that motion. So if it's a motion for a certain action based on these stipulations or based on these 3 points, that should be part of the motion. And then that gets automatically into those minutes and very clearly, and that history has been captured. So that's where it's really critical to make sure that the motions are clear, exact, and have the detail that's necessary for that, to capture that action. And also, the second part of that is when you go to approve minutes, to really look at those motions and make sure that that was captured. So I think that's where the detail needs to really, the focus needs to be in the detail on the minutes. So back right before I started here, we had an interim city clerk, and she drafted a policy regarding minutes and very specifically, minutes and the videos as well. And one of the things she identified, and that's what we're doing here tonight, hopefully, is to get some sort of direction from council, is that, we follow, as a city, we do follow the state model retention records, record retention schedules. And they're the ones that have the experts that really go in and look at all the records that are created in government. And when you need to save those records, when they really become historical, when they are just more of a working document or something that helps you get to that point where you can have, the detail of what council is trying to do for the city. So what I would like council to consider is, when it comes to the video, kind of switching from minutes to video, if we look at and consider the video that we upload onto YouTube as being more of like a resource than a record, I think that would be something to consider as far as our minutes are permanent. That is state, the state schedule that we're on. We do a recording. The recording by state is only really a tool to get to the point of being able to create your minutes and get those minutes approved. So those generally have a 6 month after approval of the minutes retention on those. And so that's why those videos that we do have backup videos that we put on our website. Those are that record for that particular part of the retention schedule. So what we're saying is we keep that the same. Currently, we're streaming these meetings. Those streaming videos are going up to YouTube, and then the public can access those whenever they want. We actually started that streaming back March 19, 2019. All of those videos are still existing out on YouTube. I have to say, though, that YouTube is able to and does make changes to their policy. So we are kind of at their mercy as far as how those videos might be retained in the future on their channel, or the city's channel on YouTube. So just recently they passed a change to their policy where they can put commercials on those. We don't have a say-so in that. We can put videos on there, we can take videos off. That's really the extent of the control we have over YouTube. So What I'm asking council to do tonight is to consider if you want to keep the videos for longer than 6 months, which currently, like I said, all the videos that we've streamed and put onto YouTube still exist since, you know, we're what, a couple of years into it. So we haven't pulled them down. I would like that we don't change our schedule, which is the model schedule that is the state's schedule as far as our retained videos that we keep or recordings that we keep, not the YouTube, that those stay as is based on the state recommendations for those records. But that the council looks at what they think is the right amount of time to keep those YouTube videos. You know, what do you think is the general time range that the videos have relevance and usefulness? You know, is there a time frame on there? Is there, you know, do we, after a year, 5 years, some, you know, maybe 10 years, I don't know. If for some reason YouTube decides to change things drastically and say we have to pay or do something differently, you know, put them out on iCloud or something that's going to now be an expense for the city. If we have this in policy rather than in our retention schedule, we can make those changes pretty quickly and easily. So that's kind of why I'm proposing is look at it more as a policy, what council thinks is a relevant amount of time to keep those videos, but not to think of them as a record. They're more of a resource for the public. So, so the other part of that, I mean, I guess I haven't really gone over as far as like technology. One of the reasons why it's always been drilled into my head as far as technology goes is you can't have technology be a permanent record. Technology changes all the time. We can all agree to that, you know, cassette tapes, CDs, flash drives, zip drives, floppy drives. You know, those things change, and the cost to migrate those into the newer technology from the older technology is huge. It's time, it's resources, it's just, and then once you start doing migrations, the chance of corruption goes up, and so that really becomes the obstacle for looking at those videos as being something of a permanent place somewhere. If we look at them as long as we have the resource of YouTube, we have a channel, we can load them on there. It's a resource for the public to look at, resource for council to look at. But we don't really have to maintain those. They will be maintained by YouTube as long as YouTube is willing to maintain them. No different than, you know, if somebody wants to print off contracts from our packets and keep it in their records. I mean, they're that's their resource. We can't really control that record once it's printed off. So I just would ask that you consider what you think that time frame should be as far as, you know, keeping those videos on YouTube as a resource.
Great, thank you, Judy. Thanks so much. Amber, did you have anything you'd like to add? Okay. Okay, great, super. Okay, Councilor Chandler, a lot of the interest in this came from you, so I think it'd be appropriate to give you the floor at this point.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Judy, for your presentation. So one of the reasons that this became an issue that we felt might need to be discussed in a council meeting is an incident that happened prior to me coming on council, a very hot button issue in town regarding a property. And what happened was the minutes of those meetings were action minutes, so more vague, and the audio, when there was some potential issues, maybe even litigation about this issue, the audio was gone. There was no way to go back because it wasn't kept. And so several citizens raised the question to me, how does this council keep records and for how long, which is why I brought it up. My question to you is, why would we not want to keep YouTube videos in perpetuity until, YouTube tells us it's going to charge us, or, until something happens? I mean, I guess I would wonder, why would we not just keep them? In the case that something like this might happen again, and we have to take a look at a video to settle an issue. So that's my question to you, is there a reason why we wouldn't?
I don't have a reason, as long as we look at them as a resource, not as a record. So the concept of that is, as long as we're not having to change our model retention schedule, I don't have a problem with it staying out there. I mean, we don't have to pull them off, but I just want the council to understand that there may come a time where that is out of our hands. But I don't have a problem with them staying out there personally. That's why I'm saying it's up to the council what they think is a reasonable time. If it's just we let them ride as long as we can, then that's certainly something that we can include in our policy, that you would like to keep them as a resource as long as we can on YouTube. I'm just saying, as far as keeping them up to date with new technology is where you start getting into money issues, time issues, challenges, things like that. So as long as they just stay out on YouTube, I don't have a problem. That's completely at the council's discretion. They want to do that.
Thank you. That's what I would like to see happen, but of course I'll defer to my fellow council members for their input. Thank you, Judy.
Sure.
Thank you. Why don't we just kind of go around the table and see where councilors take the temperature and see what our druthers are. Mr. Shade, if we could go with you, start with.
Judy, how long do we keep like an MP3 file of the audio, since I think an awful lot of our deliberations aren't very, visually kind of cued. So just as an audio.
So we do keep them for that 6 months after the minutes have been approved on
Okay.
regular meetings.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shade. Councilor Johnson?
Sure. I have a question, because I know that previously there was another city councilor who's not here now that did want them taken down. I know that there have been requests by councils taken down, and I'm just wondering, that sometimes, we're humans and we mess up and we don't maybe want to relive that for the rest of our lives. I don't know. I don't exactly remember the issue, but I don't intend on ever making a mistake, so I'm not concerned about. No, I mean, I think it's fine having them up in perpetuity, but I do think that there are times maybe when you wouldn't want them up forever.
Okay, thank you. And we'll expect you never to make a mistake, Natalie. You can set an example for the rest of us. Mayor Pro Tem?
Sure. I think that once they're out there, they're out there. People can make copies of them, of the videos. So I would just say we relinquish control of them at that point, because even if we don't want something out there, it's still out there. Someone's probably made multiple copies and posted it to whatever social platform is out there at the time. So I just think we relinquish control at that point once they go up and that's that. And in terms of the others, I reluctantly say, let's just follow the state guidelines on the action and 6 months. I hate that, but it makes sense, so thanks.
Thank you. Counselor Wolf?
Yes, can I ask Nancy a question?
Absolutely.
Can you help me understand why you hate that, but you're going to vote for it anyway?
Because I really like to, as I said before, I'm a data junkie. I also keep papers for years. I'm one of those people that would have a copy from 10 and 15 years ago. In fact, I've got all the OSAC and para meetings for the past 10 years. So if you need any of that, just ask and I'll get it for you. So that's all. I think as a city policy, it's appropriate to just go to the action minutes and 6-month retention. For me personally, I'm just obsessive that way, so.
I see. So the 6-month, thank you. So the 6-month retention, are we talking about there's only 6-month retention of the audio? Did I understand that right? Whatever John called it, an MP3 or an MP something?
Right, so it's the it's audio file, in some cases a video file.
And those are audio files we have here in City Hall. We're not
Yes.
talking about YouTube, right?
Correct.
And why do you get rid of those every 6 months? Is it sort of like, is there a reason? I mean, does we need to make more room, or it just makes you feel good? I don't understand
So,
the pros and the cons
Sure.
of keeping versus deleting.
okay, so generally the concept is that those videos or audio recordings are as a tool to develop your minutes and to make sure that you've got your minutes accurate. Once those minutes are approved, then 6 months after they're approved, then those video or audio files are ready for destruction. They can go away. And the whole reason for that is those are huge files. And to maintain those and put them somewhere starts using a lot of storage, which increases your cost. You also then have challenges with technology changes. You also have challenges with corruption, things like that happen if you're trying to migrate any of those files to newer technology.
Okay, so I can understand the idea that, you know, in a year or 2 or 3, some of the files might get corrupted. But that doesn't make sense to me to be a reason why we should destroy them now, because some of them might get corrupted someday. I mean, I don't know. I don't get it. But the part that does make sense to me is it takes up room physically in the closet or in the storage area, and we don't have enough room. I have no concept. I didn't know if it was is something you save on the computer on an external hard drive, or if this is like something, you know, that you pick up and you carry it around. What exactly, what's the MP, how is this saved?
It's a format. So it's the format that is a video file, basically, and those are large. So like the last year plus, we've been doing Zoom meetings. Those are even more robust in the amount of space that they use. And it is electronic. You know, it goes out on a storage device that's for electronic files. And I know, like, I have had recently our IT people working with me on some of the challenges that storing some of those files on our network here has been creating. It's really filling up the drives.
So it doesn't go up to the cloud? We're
No.
storing it in-house? Like on an old drive or something?
We have to control those files because those are managed under that retention schedule. So we have to have control over those
For the first 6 months?
for 6 months.
If you're allowed to destroy it in month 7, I would imagine you're also allowed to send it up to the cloud in month 7. Am I understanding that
Well,
correctly?
just so you realize too that those are a copy of what's on YouTube.
Pardon?
Those are a copy of what's on YouTube. So we're not getting rid of what's on YouTube. YouTube is basically serving as a storage facility.
So YouTube is like the backup?
YouTube is it's a resource.
Okay, well,
to
they're both
access
resources.
those.
Okay, and then also with you, I was a little confused. So with YouTube, there's no requirement that we take some of these old meetings down because we're maximizing our storage capacity or something like that. We're allowed to just keeping it up on YouTube as long as we want, unless and until they tell us otherwise. Did I get that right?
That's my understanding, yes.
And the state says you just have to retain the videos for 6 months?
After those minutes are approved.
6 months after approval?
Mhm.
And then the minutes themselves are stored indefinitely, I assume?
Yes, those are permanent.
Okay, thank you for helping
Sure.
me.
No problem.
Thank you, Counselor Wolf. Counselor Bremner?
Yeah, I would, I'd recommend that we just retain the records, both video, audio, YouTube, everything, for 6 months after it's transcribed and the minutes are approved. I think that's adequate. I don't think we need to save stuff in perpetuity, because it, as you say, it's not gonna last forever anyway. And there's gotta come a limit to everything. And I think once it's been transcribed and it's approved, as the transcription is approved, then that's the permanent record, and that's what we go with.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, and I guess my take on this is I think our records management retention policy now is adequate, it's consistent, or it aligns with the state model for municipal records retention. So I don't see that we need to make a change there. Relative to YouTube, as long as it's free and they're not charging us anything, I guess we could go ahead and just keep doing what we're doing. If there become technical changes, or YouTube changes its business model and wants to charge us money, we could take a look at it then. I don't know how much utility there is in keeping things for years and years. It would seem to me like most people have other things to do with their lives besides watch Manatee City Council meetings from years ago. But there could be times when we have issues that if the record's there and we can, or if the resource is there and we can reach back to it, that'd be nice. But I don't think I'd really make any significant changes to this point. So council, we kind of need to give direction. It seems like there's some sentiment for just staying with what we've got and living with that. Kelly, did you want to say something? Oh, I'm sorry. No, this is a work session. So no, typically we don't take public comment during a work session. Darlene, what would be appropriate is if you have something to present, if you could hand that over to Judy, and she would. Mayor, just so you know, the agenda online says it's a regular meeting. It doesn't say it's a work session.
Yeah, we just noticed that as well.
I'm sorry, it does. It does say regular meeting.
Well, mine says work session.
Well,
I think it's because we just moved over to Civic Plus,
We just have a new version.
version, and I think there was an error, so it is considered now, it's posted as a regular meeting.
well, it's a little bit irregular here, but if council has no objections, I would entertain comments from Darlene, not to exceed 3 minutes, if council has no objections. Any objection?
Is it pertinent to this issue?
Yes,
Oh,
very much so, Councilmember Wolf.
Okay.
I can,
Julie, are you okay with that?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to know if it was about this or if it was about
oh,
something
no,
else.
no,
No.
no, this is about this. I'm going to pass out an email chain from a year ago between me and the city clerk. I'm sorry, I don't know if I
Yeah, oh,
Well, that's okay, and you can appreciate that we're making transitions in technology. This is actually kind of an interesting lab experiment and something Judy was talking about here, how technology changes on us.
Absolutely.
Okay,
So,
we need your, Darlene, we need your full name and address, please.
I'm sorry, Darlene Kennedy, 18 Villaloma, Manitou Springs. I'm passionate about this subject, as you will read in the emails. We have been a victim in our neighborhood of not having audios or videos. 6 months is not enough. 6 months doesn't give a development
time to be built, a CO to be issued, a building permit to be issued. So by the time things happen, things go awry with a project that you've approved, the videos or the audios are gone. Councilmember Wolf, you may remember the very robust conversations at Planning Commission and City Council about 110 El Paso. I'm here to tell you that after the fact, there are no sprinkler systems, there are no escape windows, there is no parking lot design, anything that you and City Council approved at the time. So when we met with staff, we said, please, let's listen to the audios, and they were destroyed. There was nothing there anymore but the very vague minutes. So that is continuing, and that's just one example. The state regulation is not a regulation, it is a guideline, and most cities keep minutes and videos and audios for much longer. You can keep them in the cloud. That's where most cities keep them. And I don't know what the cloud costs, but I know from experience with one project, the cloud is $35 a month. So to not keep them for at least 5 years is really depriving you and the citizens and anyone else that you've made a decision on the ability to go back and see it. I agree with Mayor Graham that most people aren't going to want to go back and look at these, but there have been several times in our neighborhood that we were desperately looking for these audios or these videos at the time. I do believe what you do is important enough to keep it for more than 6 months. The other thing is I don't understand part of Judy's write-up because she says that audio and video files, hold on, the local media is the official record which we carry out retention and destruction on. But then she says the videos are not something that they keep forever. So just the minutes, and the minutes are vague. The minutes don't help you, they don't help us, they don't help Manitou Springs if they're gone. We want to, maybe in a year, hear what you had to say. You might want to hear what you had to say. I wish we had those audios, but they're gone.
Darlene, we're at about 4 minutes now,
Yeah,
so.
I'm sorry.
No, we
you.
appreciate your comments and your, the work that you've done,
Yeah.
so,
Thank you very much.
thank you. Appreciate it.
Mayor, may I
Ju-
respond to that about the minutes?
Sure, go ahead.
So that was the point I was bringing up earlier, that minutes are really, that is your legal action. That is your history of what happened. So that's why I stress that making motions that are clear and contain the details that need to be in there. If there's stipulations, if that was a meeting where they were approving a development, those specifics needed to be in that motion, to include sprinklers. That's the sort of detail that goes in those minutes. It's captured, it's clear, it's easy to find, it's not, you can talk about things, but if the council doesn't approve it, it doesn't matter. So that's really where, if those minutes were vague, it might have been that the motion was vague. And so that's why it's so critical that when somebody's making a motion that they make sure that they capture those details that have to be part of that motion, including sprinklers, if that's what they wanted to include. And then, you have another shot at it when those minutes come before you for approval to make sure that those motions are accurate and capture that detail.
Thank you. Yeah, please, Councilor Wolf.
So it sounds like you're saying that part of what you're saying is you want the format of the minutes to change where you're just recording the actions and whatever the 2 words you used, whatever decisions we made, the motion, who made the motion, who seconded, and it carried whatever, 5-2. And that's it, without going into, this council member was concerned about this, and then the other council member said, no, they disagreed, or you want to leave all that part out and just make the minutes really precise as to what we voted on, and all the discussion or concerns that were raised would be omitted, other than when somebody says they want it to be part of the record. Do I have that right?
Sort of. What we try to do is if there is discussion on 5 or 10 different topics, we might say there was discussion on these 5 or 10 topics. So it's clear that the council did consider those. But ultimately, when somebody makes a motion, if they don't include all, all those topics that council has decided to agree upon, then that is your tool to make sure that those stipulations or requirements are going to be met in the future. So it's really critical to make sure when you're making a motion that you capture those.
Yeah, I realize that. That's not what I'm asking about, though. But I think what I'm asking about, I think the answer is yes, that's right. I'm guessing, because you didn't disagree with me, right? You just want you don't want to
Okay.
have, we discussed these certain things, but it's not who said what or the details. Just these 6 topics, air pollution, drones, were discussed. Next paragraph. In other words, it's not who said what, and that's the part you want to eliminate so that you have more free time to work on other things.
Well, I'm not necessarily saying we need to change the way the minutes look right now. What we do is kind of a combination. So we do put some more detail in where we feel it's important. But I just want council to understand that what we don't plan on doing is having a transcription of an entire conversation. So you're not going to have he said, she said. You're going to have council brought up these 5 topics and had a discussion on them. And then this was the motion that was made. Whether it includes any of those, that's part of the motion. So it really, for history purposes, it's not necessarily important to know who said what about each of those. But, and typically, we're kind of overlapping between council meetings and kind of more of a quasi-judicial development, planning, those sorts of things do tend to get more detail put into them because they need to, because there is so much that goes into development and quasi-judicial determinations and that sort of thing. And that's really why it's critical for them that their minutes aren't vague. They have to be very specific.
Okay, so the part I didn't understand, but I think I do now, is that you're suggesting, let's just keep doing what we're doing, which is a hybrid. So when some of us say, hey, you had all this other detail, but you didn't have this other detail that I want in there, your response is, hey, it's up to me to choose, which detail, and
Sure.
it's fine.
And what we have suggested also is if there is something that happens in a meeting, and I know we had it a few times where somebody says, I really want to make sure this gets in the minutes. We do that. We capture that because we understand it's something that's of value. So we try to be sensitive to that and capture those things.
Thank you.
Councilor Chandler, please.
So first of all, thank you, Ms. Kennedy, for taking the time to come and talk to us at our not regular session. Thank you for coming. I think you brought up a really good point about a lot of times, many times, city council is making decisions on things that aren't resolved in 6 months. Sometimes these things are taking many years. So Judy, I have a question. The state requirements, is 6 months a minimum requirement? Is that the minimum?
Those
Is that what we're-
schedules are what their schedule. So they're saying that records is a very, it's like an onion. There's a lot to it. So I'm trying to not get too heavy into the layers of the onion. But as far as the schedule goes, that is what they're saying you should do. You can have exceptions. You can make exceptions. we have adopted that model because they're the ones that have the experts that come in and really look at all these and decide what's the best practice or best standard. So when they're saying, you know, you need to get rid of those at 6 months, are they going to fine you if you don't get rid of them at 6 months? No. It's basically, it protects the city. It, maybe not with recordings and things like that, but I know that there have been other types of records that if they don't get destroyed and there's any sort of litigation, now you have discoverable records that can put the city in a bad place, you know, put it into litigation or whatever. So that's one of the things, it's like, we all, I tend to have that sense too, like Mayor Pro Tem Fortune, where, you know, you want to say, well, this can have some value to it in 10 years. Why? I don't want to get rid of it. But the reality is, you don't have to keep everything. The state is saying these are the things that are important that you have to keep. These are the things that give you the history of what this government was doing and has done, and why, you know, those details.
So, thank you for that answer. So I'm still thinking, what I'm hearing you say is the requirement is at least 6 months, but you can keep them for more. So I appreciate what Mayor Pro Tem Fortune said about once you put something on YouTube, it's out there. But I guess after hearing Ms. Kennedy and fellow council members, if we're doing action and summary minutes and they are just summarizing, and some previous councils have been better at making motions than others, and we're relying on that, I don't see any reason, if it's free and it's easy to do, and we're, you know, not being charged yet, why would we not keep our YouTube videos up there in perpetuity until, you know, if no one's looking at them, who cares? I mean, but there's a potential there, if that's kind of our backup for, if there is an incident, to have that to look at. I don't see, you know, somebody offers me something for free, and it's not going to cause staff, you know, a tremendous amount of pain and agony, I would say, you know, why not keep them? So that would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Well, and if I may follow up, Mayor, if that's, so.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So I think maybe I need to just clarify. So I guess what I've been trying to express is that we just don't look at that YouTube video as a record. It doesn't fall under the state schedule. It is something out there that makes it nice for the public or the council to go back and review things or see things if they want to, or, you know, whatever the situation is. But we have an obligation to the record to manage that, maintain that, and do destruction on it when the destruction comes due, according to that schedule. So that's kind of the difference, is the recording that we have here that we get rid of after 6 months, that is on the schedule because it's not considered something that, you know, once those minutes are approved, that's what happened. So that's why I'm saying it's so important that you have detail in your motion if you need the detail in your motion. If that detail is the important part of that, then you make sure it's in your motion, because that is the history, that is the record, and that is permanent, and that will exist. We can keep that set of minutes permanently. And that video is only something to make sure that we have those minutes accurate. So rather than, you know, I agree with you as far as if everybody loves YouTube and they love having those streamed videos sitting out on YouTube that they can go back and look at, that's great. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, that's actually easier for us. We can just, they stream, they go out there, and we don't worry about them. The problem is, we haven't had YouTube forever, as far as how we've handled this. So these only start as of March 2019. And it can change. And that's why I keep saying, we can just do a policy saying, we put them out on YouTube, and they'll phase out when they phase out, when the time comes. Time to be determined. But we aren't going to remove them. But as far as our obligation as the custodian of records, we're not going to consider that a record. We're considering these things records.
Thanks, Judy. Mr. Shada?
Judy, I have a question. I understand that we are videotaping some of the stuff, probably what, in like MP4? And then I noticed like in our Saturday retreat, there was a recorder there, and I'm assuming that's probably just recording to what, MP3? Okay. So basically, I just did some rough calculations. If we pretty much use a pretty high bit rate to just record the audio, and we met 52 weeks out of the year for 5 hours, okay? All right, that would be approximately 100 megabytes of MP3, okay? You can buy storage for an entire year. I just Googled it from Google, as it turns out, for $20 for 100 gigabytes. So that's 20 years of storage. So I just wanted to kind of, now MP3 has been around 28 years, okay? I don't think a encoder is ever going to disappear for that. There's just too much stuff out there in MP3. In other words, if you got an MP3 file, it might, you're right, the tape that you might have it on, or the hard disk, or the floppy disk, or the CD-ROM, or whatever may be different, but if you can get it in bit format, there's probably going to be an encoder forever, okay, out there to listen to it. So I guess what I was wondering is why we can't just, for $20 a year, just put all the MP3 files out in the cloud, and I don't think they're ever going to have to be converted. It's just, that's $20 and the upload time. So that's just my modest proposal.
Thank you. I love it how you do those calculations during the meeting. That's cool. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem.
One thing that our city attorney has informed us when it comes to record management too, and something that I'm very familiar with because about 20 years ago I had a FOIA request that I probably spent a week doing nothing but researching a FOIA request. That was back before we had all these electronic means of storing things. So I was looking at handwritten journals and so on. But anyway, so that's something our city attorney has cautioned us that that's an added workload potentially. But it just seems to me that we have our cake and eat it too at this point. They can, as a non-record, it can stay on YouTube, accessible to everybody. The minutes are action hybrid minutes, so they're in place. And the recordings, really what's the use of them when they're on YouTube anyway, after the minutes are approved. So I don't know, I'm not seeing what the big issue is at this point, I guess.
Thank you. Other counselors? One thought that did occur to me, and when Mrs. Kennedy was referring to her particular situation there, it seemed like if there was a meeting, and I'm afraid I wasn't there, so I don't really understand all the details, but it seems like the action at a meeting was to see that this development would include, or this building would include sprinklers and escape windows and so forth, and that wasn't specifically mentioned in the minutes apparently. But we've got other documents, planning documents and requirements, and I would expect those modifications would get written into the appropriate planning documents, and that's, you'd have a building inspector go out and actually, that part of the existing process is to make sure that that all gets implemented. And Mrs. Kennedy is shaking her head. So I think maybe the minutes, this discussion is good, but I think maybe there's some other things that need to be tweaked. Yeah, yeah, I'm sorry, I guess, yeah, let's, just briefly here.
I guess the question is, and thank you, Councilmember Shada, why not for $20 a year? What are we afraid of? What are we afraid of keeping these minutes for? And I can discuss this other issue with you. I'd love to, Mayor. But the citizens and city council need these things. We need to understand why these decisions were made. The minutes say nothing. They say this motion passed and yada, yada, yada. And at 10 o'clock at night, you're really going to remember to put everything in there. It's important to hear your counsel. And that 6 months is a guideline. It's only a guideline. It's just not less than 6 months. The city of Colorado Springs keeps them for years and years and years. And FOIAs and CORAs I deal with every day. Now you're absolutely right, Mayor Pro Tem. With electronics, it's easy. And why are we afraid of CORAs and FOIAs? And why are we afraid to keep documents in case there's a litigation? We're the government. We need to be transparent. We don't need to be ruffling through things and throwing it away for fear of litigation. I mean, that's not the way we think, I hope. But for $20 a year, I ask you, why not? Thank you.
Thank you. Other council comments? It seems like Mr. Shada gave us kind of a good idea here to, we could store this and it wouldn't cost us very much, and geez, the cost.
That's 20 years of our meetings for $20. It seems like to me, cost isn't a factor.
We could pass the hat and cover it all in less time than it would take to.
I think Darlene is get the $20 bill out right here. I'm sorry.
No, I like it.
I knew she'd jump.
Having these in-person meetings is kind of neat. We're getting volunteer donations. Next, we'll be having refreshments. Okay. Well, council, it seems to me like we've got a theory on the minutes here, and now we're really talking about YouTube videos and the cost of storage, which seems to be minimal. It would seem to me that we could ask the city clerk to investigate or have someone investigate what it would cost to set this up and store it. It doesn't seem like it'd be a huge expense. Amber, do you have comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. Right now, I do use the YouTube to do the minutes. I go back and watch those and edit them. The audio that we use is our backup. If, like doing Zoom, something happens and we can't capture those minutes, we have the audio. So I think the direction we're actually looking for is if you want us to keep those audio for longer than our backup audio, not our YouTube, which is, we've already been keeping those since we started, then that's something that should be clarified. That audio is the backup if for some reason this YouTube fails, and in which it does. Or same with the audio, right? If that audio fails, hey, we have the YouTube we can go back and look at. So I just wanted to clarify that when we're talking about audio, that's our backup. That's for if YouTube gets corrupted. Just to throw that in there. And that if you want to direct us to, go look in and keep that in iCloud or whatever, however we decide to store it, then that's not a problem. But just to clarify that is the backup to doing YouTube.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Shada, this was your idea, so would you speak to it?
Well, I guess I would just propose that, for $20, I think we can make a publicly accessible Google Drive available. I think that takes 1 minute to create one of those. And then if we just name, I'm assuming we name those MP3 files, do we not, Amber, in terms of?
Yes, I date them based on the month and the date and the year.
And then I just propose we just chuck them out there in a publicly accessible drive, and then that way if there's somebody who really is having a hard time sleeping, okay, maybe we can even just name it, difficulty sleeping. And you can pick one of those MP3 files and you can put it on your headphone. I have a feeling in probably about 10 minutes, you'll be lulled to sleep.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
And would you consider that a record or a resource?
No, just a resource.
Okay.
Just a resource. I think one good thing about it is that it puts it out in the cloud. Yeah, I totally agree that in 10 years, maybe there's no such thing as the cloud. I don't know what the future is going to bring. You know what I mean? We may go back in time and we may be burning our furniture to stay warm. I don't know what horrible thing could happen in 20 years, but it seems like that for now, those digital files, if we have access to them, we just might as well stick them out there and I don't know, it just seems inexpensive to do and pretty simple.
Thank you. Other comments? What Mr. Shada just proposed, Judy and Amber, would that give you some direction as to what to do next as far as saving files, or is that not helpful?
So I will go ahead and pull that policy together and just include that as both the YouTube video and the audio recordings are resources, and that they will be placed in an area accessible to the public for as long as until council changes their mind.
Accessible through the internet, not accessible through city records, right? In other words, what John said.
Right, so it would be online, basically, accessible online.
And John, did you have something more to say?
Don't we have some other things that sometimes are a planning commission meeting? I think the planning commission makes certain decisions that don't move to council. I think HPC does, correct? Okay. What kind of digital documentation do we have on those particular kinds of things? Is that very similar?
It should be pretty similar. Now, during the age of COVID, I can't comment on how the planning department has been backing up their files. As far as I know, they've probably kept their audio longer than the 6 months. But when we were having meetings in council chambers, that they did the same thing. The commissions were being YouTubed at the direction of council, and the backup was the audio.
I guess my modest proposal would be that anytime we have an MP3 file, that we would keep for even like 6 months for just regular, administrative, reference purposes.
And once you guys look at this policy, it will go for all the boards and commissions. It's not just for council. It's directed towards the commissions, boards, and committees.
Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, Denise, please.
Yeah, I just want to mention, so what will happen is they'll go back and write an ordinance and a policy for you to come back and look at. So then you can tweak it accordingly, and it will be voted on by you at that point for the policy, and it will include all the boards, commissions, and quasi-judicials.
Council reasonably okay with that? All right, great, thanks. Well, Judy, Amber, thank you very much. Darlene, thank you for your input. We appreciate it. And sorry for the typo. This will be a work session, and actually, no, that's okay. I think we actually got some good work done, so that was helpful. Thank you. Okay, the next item is discussion regarding the federal 8th Congressional Districting. So several weeks ago, about a month ago, at the PPACG meeting, there was PPACG directors adopt a letter asking that El Paso County not be split up when it comes to congressional redistricting. The idea was pretty much to try and keep El Paso County as a single congressional district. The population is just about right for that. a number of members of PPACG have also written letters of support for making sure that El Paso County stays it's basically its own congressional district. Manatee is, I think, the only municipality that hasn't responded. We're not required to, we don't have to, but if council wants to, we can do the letter, we don't have to. So just open it up to discussion. John?
Yes, I think in the materials, and I just wanted to clarify, there was a URL that said district.org/plan/13264. I was wondering is that a proposal or whatever? I was wondering as to who put, I mean, Denise, could you illuminate us on that?
I'm trying to find exactly what you're mentioning. What I uploaded was everything that I received from from PPACG and from Rob. And so let me pull it up real quick.
Well, it's on page 5 of page 43 in the packet,
Okay.
called titled Discussion Regarding Federal 8th Congressional Districting from You. And so that's why I was
Yeah, I
asking
just
you.
uploaded
And so it's
everything.
that second paragraph there. It says, here is one example of what has been proposed to break us up in that URL. And then it brings up this blue map. And so it looks like it includes Broadmoor, the whole, looks like,
Oh, the district org plan?
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So I guess what I was wondering, do we have any insight? Because I brought it up again to try and figure out who created that website and then who's proposing that, and I'm just trying to figure out what we're chasing here in terms of who cooked these boundaries up, and should I get all bent out of shape about it when I can't figure out even who the author of it is, who proposed it, where's it coming from? I just didn't know whether you had any clarification or whether you'd just been sent an email and copied and pasted and what we have in the packet is what you have.
Right, what I have
Okay.
in the packet is
Okay,
what I
thank you.
have. I haven't spoken to him, and I called him and explained that we would have to take this to council. We could not just approve it or support it. The mayor, I know, did meet with PPACG. I think they may have gone in a little bit more depth on this. So I uploaded everything that I received, and I have not had the conversation. Mayor, I'll defer to you.
Okay, yeah, this was, again, this came up, it's been almost a month ago at PPACG and then also at PPRTA. And in both cases, those boards voted to send a brief letter supporting keeping El Paso County as a single congressional district. Shortly after the PPACG meeting, I was contacted, basically got an email from Rob O'Regan. He's mentioned in the memorandum. He wanted to immediately meet with city council, our city council, and make a presentation, and then he wanted us to sign a letter with the next day, basically. And I told him that was pushing it, or indicated that in email. I haven't had any further contact with him. I guess he did contact Denise. Yeah, it's the arguments in favor of it are that, in particular from the standpoint of an organization like PPACG, where you have a coalition of area or regional jurisdictions, municipalities, and county governments. In the case of PPACG, we've also got Teller and Park County. Of course, they wouldn't be as interested in the El Paso County situation here. Administratively, I think it makes sense to have things in one congressional district. It maybe makes life a little simpler rather than more complicated. This could be argued back and forth by, political scientists, I guess. But if council has interest, we can pursue it. We're not required to do anything. Maybe I could just quickly take the temperature to see if it's worth further discussion. Let's start at the other side here. Or Julie.
I just wanted to ask you, so based on your involvement with this discussion, what are I understand the pros are it's more administratively convenient. What are the cons? Or apparently there must be some reason that people might vote no. Can you help us understand both sides of the
Well,
equation?
I'll try, and I don't know quite what the other strategies are here, why someone would want to break El Paso County up. And they're really, that was not discussed at all at the PPACG or at PPRTA. Yeah, well, I mean, gerrymandering is the issue. And Rob O'Regan's website does say something about it's an anti-gerrymandering organization. I know a couple of the arguments that were made is that administratively, not only is it simpler, but in dealing with the military bases, that's simpler. You know, and in a from Manatoo's perspective, I don't know that that's a huge consideration. And Julie, I'm sorry, but that's really about that's as deep as I've gone into it. I really.
It sounds like you're saying whether we go yes or no on this, it won't have any effect on us as far as you're aware. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't seem to be. It doesn't seem to be worth a whole lot of time to me. But you know, if council wants to pursue it, that's that's what I'm asking. Denise, do you have you're biting your tongue, I think.
Yeah, I just, if we don't, I don't think it matters either, except we would be the only one in our region that would not support it. We have Monument supporting it, we have Fountain, and Calhan, everyone else has supported it. But they needed the letter earlier, and so it's your decision from there.
Yeah, I mean, the deadline they were working with was May the 14th, so this may be simply water under the bridge. Again, I don't know that it's worth a lot of time on this. Let's just go around the table. Steve, how do you feel?
Well, I think we're probably a little fish in a big pond, and I don't think we really matter in this question, so I'd be inclined to just defer towards going along with it.
Okay, and just spoiler alert, if council wants a letter, I'll knock a letter out tomorrow. So don't let that stand in the way. Or if someone wants to volunteer to write a letter, that's fine too. So Steve, you're saying write a letter, don't write a letter?
Well, if it's May 14th was the deadline, I think it's probably just, you don't need to write a letter. If you want to, go ahead.
I always admire a person who can read a calendar. Sometimes those people are in the minority. Okay, thanks, Steve. Julie?
I don't have enough information one way or the other, and plus it looks like it may be moot anyway. So I don't understand this well enough to have a position.
Okay, all right, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
I don't think that not signing the letter is lack of support. It's not like we're coming out against it. We're just not signing up for it. So I'm not particularly concerned. I think we're a blue dot in a sea of red. So that always worries me a bit when I see things like this. However, Reagan's appears to be from a genuinely nonpartisan organization. So I just think it's pretty low priority for us at this point.
Okay. I'll just reiterate low priority in my mind. Judith?
I don't support writing a letter. I agree with Councilor Wolf that I certainly don't have enough information, and reiterating what Mayor Pro Tem Fortune said about the blue island in a sea of red, I just don't think that we need to address it. Thank you.
Natalie?
I support everything that's been said so far.
Sorry, could you say that
I
again?
support everything. I support what Judith said. I support.
Oh, okay, sounds good. I think we understand. Okay. Okay, so I think we'll table this and take no action. Okay, I'm perfectly good with that, thanks. Okay, before we move into, we're going to hear on the Hiawatha Gardens and the library. Not sure which order is. Should we take a little break? Everybody okay with that? Let's take a 10-minute break and we'll get back to it. Thanks. Hi, if we could go ahead and kind of coalesce and get started again, please. Okay, welcome back. It's kind of nice to have a chance to visit with folks, isn't it? Okay, so the next discussion item tonight is our approximately 60-day update on the Hiawatha Gardens from the Hiawatha Gardens Task Force 3. So Dole and Crystal are going to present for us, so you two have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. It's fantastic to be in front of everybody for a change. I don't think I've been in person in front of this council, so it's really wonderful to see everybody's faces. Tonight, me and Dole Grebenik are here on behalf of the Hiawatha Gardens Task Force 3 to give a 60-day project update. So our agenda for tonight, I'm just going to briefly go over the previous updates that we've given to council and the outcomes of those. I'm going to refer you back to our council resolution that was approved in October of 2020 and the direction that the task force operates under. We will also be going over our current tasks that we're working on, what our next steps ahead look like, and then, of course, taking any questions from council that you may have. So this slide is a summary of our previous updates. Task Force 3 essentially reconvened in September of 2020. We had a structural engineer come in and reevaluate the buildings at Hiawatha Gardens, and their reporting indicated that structure 2, the link, and the perimeter additions were all structurally compromised, and so they did recommend proceeding with selective demolition of those areas. Shortly after that, Council did approve Resolution 3120, directing us to retain the historically significant portions of Hiawatha Gardens for future use by the community and as a multimodal transportation hub. Moving on to 2021, in January, we came in front of council and we presented a second engineering report that indicated that the dance hall was presumably structurally sound, while again, the link, structure 2, and those perimeter additions were not feasible to retain. In that same update work session, it resulted in the approval to initiate an RFP for the selective demolition. That selective demolition was clear that we would be keeping the dance hall portion and removing all non-historic and unsound portions of the building. And then as recently as April 2021, our update included several reasons for delays with that RFP. We had to seek out additional technical assistance to issue that RFP correctly and get the right contractor on board. Thank you. So I would just like to ground us back in this Council Resolution 3120. The goal of it is to retain the historically significant sections of Hiawatha Gardens building for future use as a transportation hub and for community use. I just would like to also iterate here that the task force as a whole has taken a very conservative approach with our work with Hiawatha Gardens. It's been iterative and incremental. We are being careful in our steps, and our progress may not seem like it's going lightning fast, and usually progress takes money in order to move ahead, and the task force has all agreed that we would like to be conservative in our spending and make sure that we're taking each step and not getting ahead of ourselves and making best use of our taxpayer money. So that leads us to where we are today, our current tasks, and those are heavily involved in selective demolition. And this is the part where I will turn it over to Dole so he can speak about the activities with that.
Thanks, Crystal. Current tasks, as you guys have all seen, that building is currently under partial demolition. So there is significant progress out there. That building is very, very hot right now. I have been inside several times, and it's a difficult work environment for sure. But to focus on a couple of these, so we did find when the contractor mobilized out, there was another area that they were concerned about that might have had asbestos. We had it tested. It indeed did have to. We had to quickly have a contractor come and abate that, which they did. And that allowed us to apply to the state to get our demolition permit. And I think we got word that the contractor got the demolition permit today. So the way that works is you are allowed to disassemble a building however you want until you hit the structural elements. Once you hit the structural elements, that's what the demolition permit's for, because that's when it becomes the safety of whoever's going to use that space. So that's why the contractor was allowed to mobilize in to get started, because he wasn't touching any of the structural members. Now that he has that demolition permit from the state, he can do everything else he needs to do. So that's a very big milestone for that project. I don't even think the task force knows about that yet. We've already talked several times that we had the funding came from PPRT. They did approve it, so we are on our way. You guys have hopefully maybe seen some of the pictures. It started slow with a couple of days of just erecting fence. The contractor did work with us and did push some of their construction fence in to accommodate additional parking at Hiawatha, which we felt was very generous of them. They understand and see and feel the traffic that parking lot experiences, so they are trying to do the best they can to accommodate that. Okay, so what are our goals for the selective demolition? And we try to be really consistent with this, but there was really some question about where the line between what was bolted on, what was attached to that building, and what was actually the historic elements of that dance hall. It had been framed over several times, and we're happy to report that it's actually fairly obvious where the original dance hall stopped and where contractor A, B, and C came in and overframed up to that. There's a really defined soffit that runs around the perimeter of the building. You can see old wood, and then you can see new wood right next to it. So there's a very clear definition of what was historic and what was not. And interestingly enough, I'll call it the apron was not part of the historic part of the dance hall. That really all was stitched on from additional contractors, whoever owned the building at that time. The actual footprint of the dance hall is very tight up to its foundation. There was not a soffit or anything that really came off of it. But the nice thing about that is we can, with a lot of confidence, really do some partial demolition and not disturb the historically significant elements of the building. The other thing that means is that the contractor was able to, with confidence, look at the perimeter of the building and see foundation under the perimeter of the building. One of the issues with having that soffit extend too far out, or an awning, so to speak, was that had to have its own foundation design potentially, and so we don't have to worry about that as well. And I'm sure you're all going to have questions about that. Closer? Sorry. Okay, sure. So what happens next? So we are working to get the structural engineer on board to come out and help once we know now the de-stitch line. He can come out and look at the foundation, and we can evaluate the foundation to see if it is sufficient for that building, and what then, with a building with that type of structural element and that kind of foundation, what its possible uses could be, for future discussions. We've shown you this slide before. Under the partial demolition contract is the buildings there. That north is actually left on that screen, but all those areas that are hatched out, those are what the contractor is de-stitching. If you go look there now, you can see how they've opened up roof and found it. And also on the top of this paper, which is the east side of the building, they actually literally roofed over a roof. So it was pretty obvious again where that was done. And then my last slide. So what's going to happen here going forward is, as the contractor continues to get that building de-stitched, once there's a fair level of confidence that whatever they tear down will not damage or pull or tear away or harm the historic dance hall, they will bring in their track hose and their dump trucks, and they will start pulling out that building chunk at a time. Once that's done, they will regrade the space, and we anticipate having about 20 new parking spots temporarily at the site that can be used until that site is fully, I don't want to say designed, but identified on how it's going to be used. So we will get that immediate benefit. We're going to add some lighting to improve the safety there at that site. And then we have a beautification committee, a landscape group that's helping to do some improvements in the area as well, because I think it's going to take a little while to figure out the future of that building.
What's that committee? Who's on the committee? Who created the committee? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Dole, back to you, sir.
Mayor,
Okay, Crystal?
Mayor, may I just ask everybody, as you speak, please have it close, because otherwise people at home cannot hear us. And then if you're not talking, turn yours off so that it will focus on just the one that is talking. Thank you.
Let me move to the next slide here. Continuing on with our current tasks, the match board application, as noted in our previous update, we have submitted that plan with our budget, but the match board has not decided to disperse that money until we decide on the retention at Hiawatha Gardens. So we hope to have that information by their next meeting, but it's kind of unclear on that timeline right now. We have been partnering with our city PIO, providing project updates, keeping the city webpage up to date, and making sure that our community has access to not only the task force, but all of the happenings with Hiawatha Gardens. I keep going the wrong direction here. And this slide just notes the ways that the community can get in touch with us, the URL for the city website, which, like I said, is kept up to date with current information. And then we do have a city email address that comes directly to me and Dole, and we respond to community comments or questions on a regular basis. So looking ahead, the next steps for the task force are we do plan to show the community what the footprint of the historic dance hall looks like after the partial demolition. I think it's really important for people to get eyes into that space because there's still a lot of architectural value in that building, and I think us providing that information and providing pictures really doesn't do it justice. So we hope to have that open house and for people to lay eyes on those elements. And then we also will be developing an RFP for conceptual drawings as part of our community engagement, and then engaging with our community through virtual avenues and in-person meetings. And obviously, once we get further into the use of Hiawatha Gardens, we need to lay out how we're going to fund that. So we will be investigating capital campaign. And with that, that wraps up the 60-day update that we have for Hiawatha Gardens, and we would welcome any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Dole. Council, anyone want to start off with questions? Julie?
When do they anticipate the demo will be done?
So the permit came in today, so that's great news for us because that was critical path. The utilities are not fully disconnected, so we're working on that, but that should not necessarily delay some of the structural demolition. So I think we are looking at 4 or 5 weeks from now-ish.
And then soon thereafter, that's when you would have the open house at the location?
Once we feel like the site is safe and we can properly show it, then yes.
So like mid-July or somewhere around there?
I think that'd be a good goal,
August.
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions or comments? Steve? No? Okay. John? Natalie, Judith? Nancy? Okay. I guess, Dole, maybe you could address when the building's kind of stripped down or you've got the selective demolition done, can you maybe go into a little more detail as to how the evaluation is going to be on the remaining structure? It's been alluded to at a high level, but if you could maybe provide just a little detail.
Yeah, that is where we're going to engage the structural engineer and have them come in and evaluate the foundation. And then to have it reviewed, have a report written, and that's the decision point if the building is structurally sound or not.
Okay, thank you.
And that is actually in the works. I mean, we are on schedule with the consultant so that we are not partially demoed and then waiting around for a while. So as soon as reasonable, we'll have them come out, do the evaluation. I was in the building yesterday and they found they called it a trap door. It's really just an access under the stage. When they were disassembling the stage, they found an access. And so it actually allows them to access the whole foundation from the inside because they couldn't actually access the foundation from the inside before. It was just the outside. So that's good. So we should be able to get a good idea. Now, it's all mucky right now, but as it dries out, the engineer should be able to get in there, get guys on it, and we should be able to get good quality data.
Okay, good, thank you. Also, in the resolution, I think it was also in the slides, there was a reference to initiate into a discussion with the COG to use the $500,000 that they've sort of pledged. Has any of that discussion begun?
It has. We had a meeting set up with the COG, and because of obvious reasons, because they just opened, their schedule filled up, and so what we did instead was we actually sent the COG a series of questions to try to understand how we can work with them and partner with them and come up with solutions and on how that money could potentially be spent in partnership.
Okay, so they're giving some thought to the question. That's, okay, good. And I think my last question, I think sort of the set of a process here, you're probably getting a better idea of the structural capabilities of the building. Do you have a sense of kind of the general nature of the building, what it could be adapted to if it were to be salvaged? Or if that's putting you on the spot, then maybe that's not a good thing to ask.
I would comment this, that from what I can see, the building is obviously old, but it looks like it's in pretty good shape.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's all I've got. I think that's all council has, so thank you very much. I guess it'll be an exciting 60 days here. Maybe we'll see you sooner than 60 days. We'll see. Thanks. Crystal, thank you very much. Dole, thank you. Okay, and the next discussion item is our 60-day approximately update on the library. Okay, well, I think we're all ears here. If you'd go ahead and introduce yourselves. Christine, we all know you, of course, but and the other, Mary and Rob, anyway, for the record, your names and full names and addresses, please.
Yes, I'm Rob Dannon, and I live at 112 Cave Avenue here in Manatee. Nice to see you all in person.
And my name's Mary Pulvermacher, and I live at 20 Craig Lane in Manitou Springs. So it's nice to be here in person.
Hi, good evening. My name is Christine Lowenberg, and this evening, the Preserve and Renew Our Carnegie Library Task Force, we're here to provide you with the scheduled 60-day update regarding the activities that are associated with the Carnegie Library building. As you've just met, representing the task force tonight is Mary Pulvermacher, who is the chair of the primary subcommittee working diligently right now with the structure of the building, architectural and engineering, as well as Rob, who is the chair of the task force. The task force has continued to ensure that there's robust community engagement. The community continues to engage with the task force and staff. There's been numerous opportunities to learn, discuss, and share concerns about the project. In the council packet, we've provided a detailed accounting of completed and ongoing actions. I did not prepare a separate presentation for tonight. Your questions and concerns are very important to us at this point, so we look forward to hearing those. I would like to clarify that in the memo that came to you, the word final in the title does not mean that this is a final update. It was a clerical note that didn't clear out. So staff are working. I would like to comment quickly on what staff are doing, and then we're going to turn it over to the task force and allow the task force representatives to update you. So staff are working with the selected architectural and engineering team to analyze the building as it is, what the possibilities are, site stability, as well as facilitate a formal stakeholder engagement. We are on schedule to bring 3 detailed drawings or designs to this body, July 13th. Prior to that, staff are scheduling a community outreach meeting that will be held the last week of this month. We're finalizing that right now. We're looking towards the final Tuesday of this month, which I believe is the 29th. Excuse me. So also finalizing the process with the campaign consultant. Staff are actively working on that. We're preparing materials also for the Colorado Common Grant application. So with that, that's the bulk of the staff engagement at this time.
I know you all have the packet, our update, our 60-day update, which was in your packet. And so rather than rehash anything from there, I would be open to, we would be open to questions or comments that you may have, and we can maybe fill in the, between the lines if you had any further questions for clarification purposes.
Okay, well, in that case, council, let's open it up to questions and comments. Mayor Pro Tem, please.
I just wanted to compliment you on your, the last couple pages, the timeline highlights. I think it just really lays out what you're doing very, very nicely. So that's my favorite, what I most looked at in the entire packet.
Other comments? Questions? Councilor Chandler, please.
I also just want to say how impressed I am with what you're doing and how you're doing it. And I got to see the door knocker, and I just wanted to say I just thought that was just a great idea, and it looks great. And I just real creative, really creative, getting the community involved. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just add to that? Thank you for that comment, and we are still canvassing all the neighborhoods within Manatee. We have done, I believe, 1,000 door hangers, and we're doing another run because we're quickly running out. And it's not just task force members who are doing that, but we have community members who have offered to help us with that. And we're also we've talked with the chamber. I met with the chamber. Marcy Morrison and I had a presentation to the board, and we're working with Leslie, and they're going to help us distribute bookmarks that will be coming out very shortly, and working with the local businesses to help us promote the work that we're doing. And then, of course, having bookmarks at the MAC library. So be looking for those.
Okay, thank you. I noticed in the packet materials you had reference to a city business plan or something. I was a little mystified by that.
I can speak to that.
Slide 5, I think it was, incorporate City of Manatee Springs business plan into library project. Yeah, if you could let us know what you're thinking there.
Early on in the process, it was mentioned that there might be a business plan to lay out I think Councilor Shada called it the big picture view of funding on this. And so we anticipate that at some point there may be such a thing, and if there is such a thing, we'd like to incorporate it. It's not a commitment that this will exist, but something that lays out the whole sort of longevity on the funding, not just getting the building renovated, but also operating beyond that with rent coming in, et cetera. So that's an assumption. I'll confess that's an assumption on my part based on early discussion. Whether that's OBE or not, I don't know. So.
Okay. Actually, it's, given the heat today, suddenly it's summer, and then where did spring go? I'm asking myself that question. Before we know it, it'll be budget season, so that'll be here quicker than we realized. In October, we'll be doing our budget retreat, but city staff has to do quite a bit of work in preparation for that. And in fact, later this month or next month, we'll have our mid-year update. So if money's going to get talked about, we should probably talk about it sooner rather than later. And I don't want to speak presumptively. Council hasn't really talked about funding for the library or any of this. But I think we're here to listen. Council, do you have any follow-on thoughts to that, or you want to talk money, Mr. Bremner?
Sure, I see in the packet that it mentions you're working with Kimberly Sherwood with the new capital campaign on grant writing. It says you're going to start the grant writing process in spring and summer 2021. I just wondered where you are with that right now.
So, oh, sorry.
Good question. What, my reference earlier to working on the grant, Colorado Common Grant application, we've begun working on that. That's a pretty substantial resource that we'll use for all grant applications. So the foundation for that's been laid. We're already working on it. We do anticipate once Kimberly's, the kickoff meeting for her hasn't occurred yet. It actually is tomorrow, Thursday. And so we'll have that first conversation with her, and our expectation is that she's going to give us some guidance and direction on best places to start specifically with grant applications. We do know that for the majority of grant applications, we need to have some sort of concept. So to be frank, we're a little slow on submitting any of those applications because we need to have those 3 concepts that we'll bring here for further discussion so that we can include those.
Yeah, and I would also think that with the potential for more money coming from infrastructure or different other things like that, if we have these concepts shovel ready to go, then we'll probably be more likely to get funding.
Yes, that is the absolute intent. I love shovel-ready projects, and that's what we intend for this to be.
Council, other comments? Questions? I guess not. Well, thank you very much. We hope things move along steadily and that we'll see progress. Great. Mary, Rob, Christine, thank you very much. Gosh, time flies. So, I guess it's time for council correspondence. Anybody have anything? No, let's see. I think I saw Steve first. Steve?
Yeah, I have something, and it's something I've already brought up with C-Click Fix, and Denise and Roy are aware of it, and they're working it as well. But I'm just bringing it up because my neighbor came to me, so it's council correspondence. And the COG was working on the railroad Saturday night and Sunday night until after 1 o'clock in the morning. And it kept Upper Ruxton awake. And Sunday morning was not a good morning because my wife had to go to work next morning. So it's inconvenient. So they're working it. I think there's going to be some resolution because we do have a noise ordinance in Manatee Springs. And they were making lots of noise. That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you. Julie, do you have anything? Okay, all right. Mayor Pro Tem?
Based on what we did on Saturday, at PARA meeting last night, I let them know that council was interested in them coming back with a recommendation on a parks policy. And after some discussion, they realized that that was a great opportunity for them. And so I think that they're kind of excited now about doing that. Skylar, who is the new parks director for Manatee, is going to assist them in that endeavor. He knows of other cities that have had parks policies. And so I just wanted to let council know that they've taken that on.
Great, thank you. Councilor Chandler?
All I've got is we're meeting, the Climate Action Work Group is meeting next week, and I don't know if all of you know, but it's been a really, really very dismal and sad and scary week in the news for global climate-related news. How that impacts Manatee is we are in that very severe drought area and very high risk for wildfire. You probably already know that. So. But I am really grateful that next, our climate action meeting will be just taking a look at thoughts on the code rewrite with a focus on the sustainability piece of it. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Natalie?
I have my Metro board meeting tomorrow, so I'll have something next time. But is there a mayor's ride on Friday? Is there?
Oh, yeah, the mayor's bike ride is noon Friday, like noon to 2 o'clock. It's just going to be around Manitou, I think. Corey Satella and Carl Stang are organizing that, so. And I believe we're going to be using Pike Ride bikes like we did last year.
Do you know
So-
where you're taking off from? Do you know where you're starting?
Well, probably, I think we're going to start out here in front of City Hall, go down Manitou Avenue, probably cut off onto Mayfair, El Paso Boulevard, loop down towards, maybe down towards El Paso, Garden of God's Trading Post and back up on El Paso. I suspect it may change a little bit,
Thank you.
but you're certainly welcome to come join us.
I'll wait.
Or anyone? Oh, sorry, I forgot, okay. John? Okay, nothing. Okay, so yeah, the mayor's bike ride, be Friday at noon. You're welcome to come. I was gonna say, Manitou Springs, we're in the top 10 artistic communities in the city, and Denise, you wanna? Okay. We know one from Colorado. Denise, you wanna brief us on that?
Well, I sent you the update from Becca, but it's, yes, we were voted the 9th in the nation for small cities with arts. I was reading about it. We made the top 20, and then there's a vote after that. So this is a very prestigious award. So think about Manitou. We've made now the third friendliest. Now we're the 9th in the nation for arts, which means we're going to have, and it's a good thing. Right? But the opportunity that we have is how do we do mobility? And it's the thing that we keep thinking about because more and more people want to come and see this great town that we get to live in. And it's the mobility and how to manage that. So one of the things that we continue to work on, but really congratulations to Becca Siebert and all the work that she's done with the Creative District. It's a great honor to have that recognition.
Great, thank you. And I guess we'll go on with the city administrator's report. So, Mr. Cheney?
Yes, a few things to report tonight. We will be meeting with the COG this week and then bi-weekly to discuss any issues. So if you have any issues that you know about, please pass them on to Denise, and then she'll let me know, and we can have those discussions with the COG. And that includes working on that noise issue the other night. So the flower beds at Manatee Avenue are going to be worked on, so that's been passed on, that there's some that are still in bad shape, so those are started up. And we will be striping around Memorial Park in probably 1 to 2 weeks, which includes changing the angle of the diagonal parking to more like 30 degrees. Right now it's too steep and it causes the road to be too narrow and hazardous, so we're going to bring them back to where they need to be. I think a few years ago they were striped wrong, so we're going to fix that. And the crosswalks will be marked better for safety as well. And then after that, we'll be striping El Paso and working on the street down there for safety. And the thought is to narrow the drive path a little and widen the bike path more so that we can protect the pedestrians that are walking and the bikes that are going down that. And we're looking at putting the mile per hour, a couple of those speed limits on the pavement to see how that works out. That's all I have.
Thank you. Oh, John?
Roy, I have to really commend, I really like those pedestrian crossings, the soft signs that are in the middle. I have to admit, it's sort of my little pet project to, sometimes it looks like delivery trucks scoot them and I move them back. But I really think they're working, okay? I mean, I notice people noticing them and whatnot. And I guess I'd like to make just one modest suggestion. You know, we have that flashing light down there at Patsy's. My observation is that it's almost never used. But boy, I guess my suggestion would be is I'd like to see it moved right here because this is really this transition zone where people, they are still flying in front of the Mac at 45 miles an hour. and they're just starting to kind of, oh, wow, this looks like a 20-mile-an-hour zone. And they're still got the afterburners on in front of the fire department. And I had a neighbor who was almost like killed there just not too many months ago, in terms of pretty scary. I watched it all happen, okay? And I'm just thinking that if, I don't know, I think that's a solar thing, isn't it?
That's correct. Yeah.
And so I guess I was just wondering, just if we could move it and try it at City Hall and just see whether it gets used more or whatever, and whether some people, because I do notice the flashing ones down by El Monte, the school district, people really like that because, again, people are really flying in that area around El Monte. You know, that I call that the 55-mile-an-hour zone in Manatee, you know, where people are, you know, they either getting ahead of steam leaving town, or boy, they are in a hurry to get downtown, but they're flying in that area. And that blinking thing, I think, works. And so that would be about my only suggestion in terms of modifying the trial thing. I try and find every day all the little orange flags, and it seems like they are now officially souvenirs or something, because I think I'm down to 3. The
3 throughout the town, or just there by, where's the 3?
You know, some days I can find, but it seems like they're just dwindling down.
Slowly?
They're
Okay.
just, yeah. The last I checked, when I walked both sides all the way back and forth, and I looked in the flower beds and the whole 9 yards, I could find 3. So I don't know whether somebody's got a fistful or whatever. I was walking up Ruxton the other day, and somebody had one in the back of their backpack. So I don't know where that ended up. I was going the other direction, so.
Well, we'll replace those, and I'm glad you brought up in front of City Hall, because I was looking at actually just maybe purchasing another flashing light. I don't know if I want to move the one by Patsy's. I also want to be careful we don't put too many flashing devices downtown, but the one in front of City Hall is definitely a dangerous crosswalk. And if we put one anywhere, I think it needs to be there, for sure.
I guess what I was going to say is I sit there and watch, and in an hour, okay, of time, almost nobody ever pushes that button. I mean, it's very rare to see somebody use it at Patsy's. And so I was just thinking that maybe it's because there's a perception that traffic is slow enough in there that they don't feel like that is there, or because it's sort of a little out of sync with the other intersections. And so that's why I was just suggesting that if cost was an issue and it wasn't hard to kind of uproot it, and we didn't want to purchase another one, that was going to be my suggestion, is that we stick it over here and try and see if it gets used some more, and whether it really helps, save somebody from stepping out in that glide zone. Thank you.
I was going to just add my experiences that relative to the flashing light there at Patsy's, people do seem to be using it when I'm there, either as a pedestrian or driver. Just my 2 cents.
As you're out and about, are you seeing people using the flags?
I don't, it's interesting because I don't see people, in fact, it's been a long time since I've seen somebody actually use a flag and go down the crosswalk. I've seen people carrying them down the avenue, okay? So somehow or another, it just seems like those things, people aren't getting the idea that you use it and then you put it back over on the other side.
Okay, thank you. I always use it for this one, and it works great. When you use it, people stop, but we have to somehow maybe find a way to educate, to remind people to use those, because it does make a difference. Okay, I just have a couple of things, if it's okay, Mayor. May I go ahead?
Well,
One,
please.
I think you guys saw today that we have now a Crime Stoppers offer of $5,000 for the reward for the cemetery. We are that went out, which is great, and we're working on that diligently, continue to work it, and working on the fundraiser and putting that in place. Meeting with various residents, and it feels like the lot of potholes right now, and so we're working on the potholes, which is going to happen during this time of the year. The snow is over and the freeze is done, so that is one thing that we continue to work on and manage is potholes and getting those filled as quickly as we can. That's really, and tomorrow both Ann and I are going up to meet with the city water attorney in Woodland Park to have a discussion about our water rights and all of those things. So we'll be going up in the late afternoon to meet with her.
Okay, thank you. Natalie, did you have?
I was just gonna, there was a request by several members of the community to add a bucket and flags near the old Chase Bank for that crosswalk as well. Yeah, it was mentioned, yeah.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? If not, if there's no objections, we're adjourned. Thank you.